Hello everyone. Good morning and good wherever you are. Thank you for joining me and all your sanghas here on Zoom and Facebook as well as YouTube as well as in person. Thank you joining me and Tibetan Buddhist Society Canberra. This is our regular Sunday morning meditation followed by a Dharma talk. So first of all we will do refuge and renewal of our thoughts, intention, and purpose, and prayer, and visualization, concentration, instructions on meditation, what you have, as we chant these prayers. And then we'll do the meditation. The meditation is fundamental in Buddhism. If we do not practice, no matter how much we know, read, chant, they have only secondary benefits. So all the realization culminates during meditation. Even you study many years, even you're well versed in the concepts of philosophy, know many prayers, chantings, ideally you should cultivate realization through meditation and discipline. So that's why we're going to do the meditation after the prayers. So join your hands at heart and extend your very sincere altruistic motivation to dedicate this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Ete Latama Avacha Ajendala Ashare Adavatuve Endabu Dadama Sangha Aitere Ete Latama Avacha Ajendala Ashare Adavatuve Endabu Dadama Sangha Aitere Ete Latama Avacha Ajendala Ashare Adavatuve Endabu Dadarama Sangha Aitere Ete Latama Avacha Ajendala Ashare Adavatuve. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion for those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion Tadona and far. So now we do the meditation, calm, abiding meditation. You need to observe at least these 4 S. The stillness of the posture of attention, the sincerity of the motivation. You have to be knowingly check your posture, correct your motivation, sincerely, altruistically, and then with serene attention, your attention to focus one pointedly on the posture, on the forward counting of qualified round breathing, a reverse counting of super qualified round breathing. All of this, your attention should be unwavering, unscattered, very serene. Otherwise, it wouldn't be calm abiding. If your attention is not serene, you will be agitated. So, serene attention, checking and correcting and improving. It's not a passive sit, but active sit, active knowing. And then 4th S is simplicity. To simply guard these first 3 S's: stillness, sincerity, and serenity. And don't let the mind wander off, become fidgety or restless or bored. Stay fully present. I'll use the gong in 3 slots of 10 minutes. So thank you everyone. Now after the meditation, I'm going to here today focus on the continuation of the theme of Buddhism before the Nalanda Panditas, because it seems that the early part of Buddhism is often either not remembered or not correctly remembered, or choose not to go about elaborating when people who champion their own schools, maybe that started in some centuries, they start to glorify and edify small number of teachers and sing their praises, which is very, very relevant as a history of during that period. So the Tibetan Buddhist traditions do that. When they talk about Kagyu, they talk about how their lineage started with Naropa, and then the Nyingmapas do the same, talking about how their lineage started with Padmasambhava and how great Padmasambhava was. And Sakyapa do the same with the Virupa, and Gelupa in some way cannot really do that because they came too late. But nevertheless, they always try to go to speak as their glorious lineage came from Atisha. Even if we go as Atisha is concerned, that's 11th century. And so when you look at the history of Buddhism in Tibet, they all source their inspiration from the Nalanda Panditas. I have been really thinking seriously about this, because who the Nalanda Panditas, and when you identify even the 17 Nalanda Pandita that His Holiness Dalai Lama has specifically given credit to, the earliest one is Nagarjuna, and that is only 2nd century. So what is the gap between 2nd century and 5th century BC? That's 700 years. So therefore, I've already done one session on this briefly as a sketch. But from now onwards, I'm going to go a little bit in detail based on available materials, historical materials. However sketchy or limited they are, it's very important to know who were the role players, kings and great scholars and great masters during those first 700 years. That the Tibetan Buddhists don't really talk a lot about, because for them to glorify some Nalanda Pandita seems to good enough. Because Nalanda Pandita is only authors of the Shastras, which is commentarial literature on Buddha Vachana, meaning words of the Buddha, that are recorded in the Tripitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka, Sutra Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. So it's very important, what does the Tibetans have in their books that actually does give credit to the earliest time, that are not quite required to say very much about, but nevertheless there are some old books. And one such book is The History of Buddhism in India by a Tibetan author called Taranatha, History of Buddhism in India. His name is Taranatha. He's one of the very great scholars of Zhentong tradition, Zhentongpa tradition, which itself is a kind of offshoot of Sakyapa tradition. So in his history of Buddhism India, he at least have names and sketches of those great role players after Buddha passed away. And then at least good few hundred years, I would imagine. I don't think it's very, very comprehensive, but nevertheless, it gives a really list of teachers and kings and who came when, what they did during those first, I would say at least first 150 years seems to be quite reliable. So that's why that history of Buddhism that's written by Taranatha. Taranatha is a really is incredible Tibetan scholar from 16th century. But he seems to have went in great length to find the sources, and he collated a lot of materials. And I wouldn't go into those materials sources, but we will look at the first 150 years in more closely. Okay. This is, of course, following the passing away of the Buddha, 490 plus before Christ. So this is way before Christian era started, 400 or plus years. So this is after the Buddha passed away. So in this first chapter 1, Taranatha talks about the period of King Ajatasattu. King Ajatasattu was son of King Bimbisara, who was the king of Magadha. So he has belatedly converted to Buddhism after his time with the Devadatta finished. Then the king Ajatasattu later on remorsefully accepted all his misdeeds against the Buddha and tried to cause schism and tried to side Devadatta. And so later on, King Ajatasattu became very important. He actually became responsible to host the first Buddhist council after Buddha passed away. It is said that all the teachings of the Buddha that were all in the memory of the Arhats were collected together. It's not so much they were collected together by writing them down, but he invited all the senior bhikkhus who were all mainly Arhats. There were at least 500 of them, including Ananda, and that big event of calling all the senior 500 bhikkhus and Arhats to come together and retell the teachings that they heard from the Buddha was undertaken under the patronage of King Ajatasattu. There are lots of Buddhist sources from the Theravadan tradition called Mahavamsa and so on. But in those, it doesn't mention the role of Ajatasattu. In the Tibetan Buddhist history, they give true credit to King Ajatasattu as the one who convened the first Buddhist council, and therefore, Ajatasattu become very important. He asked all the teachings to be collected. The collected meaning the Upali, the Venerable Upali, the ex-barber, became the compiler of Vinaya, and Ananda became compiler of the sutras, and Mahakashyapa became the compiler of the Abhidharma. So therefore, the word of teacher word of the teacher were so precious, and they did not want any of them to be forgotten. And so he was very responsible for providing the sponsorship to do the activities of compiling the teachings. It's said, Taranatha says that when Ajatasattu convened that, even the gods and spirits, and they all offer praise to the king. And there was lots of King Ajatasattu become very famous for his in a great undertaking after Buddha passed away. Not only had he remorsefully confessed his misdeeds in the front of the Buddha before, but even after Buddha passed away, he shouldered the responsibility. And not only that, he also he was king of Magadha, the modern I think most of the Vihar, state of Vihar, and he brought under his control without warfare all the five big cities of India, only except Vaishali, it says. And because Buddha and his two chief disciples, both Shariputra and Moggallanaputra, has already predeceased the Buddha, and not only that, 168,000 arhats also passed away into nirvana very much soon after Buddha passed away. So because nobody was really interested to hang around after Buddha passed away. And so, of course, Mahakashyapa was the senior most, and he has attained arhatship, and everybody was really much plunged into grief as a result of everybody passing away into nirvana. And so at that time, Buddha had already instructed prior to his passing away that this teaching should be guarded by none other than Mahakashyapa. So this tradition of having Patyaka system, 7 Patyaks, according to Tibetan Buddhist records, there were 7 Buddhist Patyaks. First was the Mahakashyapa. And all the bhikshus who saw the teacher Buddha in person said that because of our own carelessness, we failed to attain distinction during the time of the Buddha. And they resolved to now to devote themselves exclusively to guard the teachings. And under the patronage of King Ajatasattu, they then resolved to devote themselves, and there were younger bhikshus who has not seen the Buddha in person. They say, if we are incapable of practicing the doctrine properly, and because we didn't see the Buddha, we wouldn't know how to do. So we are likely to be misguided, and if we do not exert ourselves. So everybody was on one level very grief-stricken, another level they also frightened the future of the doctrine. So they all gathered together, and so then many young ones became ordained, and then even though many holy ones, senior ones, passed away, their number were greatly replenished or replaced by a swelling number of new disciples. And the new disciples included all members of the 4 sanghas: laymen, laywomen, ordained man, and ordained woman. So, and all of them were not only becoming disciples, but many of them attained arhathood. So therefore, when we hear about this arhathood, this is really important, because how would they attain arhathood if they didn't have the right view through the right meditation? So obviously the Mahayana propagation, as they have some kind of special teaching called middle way, only through the writing of Nagarjuna. how did the arhats attain arhathood if they didn't have the right meditation and right wisdom? Of course they can't. So they obviously have heard, remembered, meditated on the very the lamp of the Dharma, that is the teachings of the Buddha, the middle way. So we mustn't therefore assume that some later Mahayana scholars, only after constructing Nalanda, that those treatises were written. So this is really I'm interested to see why the attainment of arhathood didn't become so important later on, whereas early days after the Buddha, disciples were all attaining 4 stages of arhathood. And Ananda himself, as well as Mahakashyapa, as well as Upali, these 3 are three were contemporaries. All of them taught, preached the Dharma to all 4 classes of the Sangha, and also those who were proficient in other Pitakas, they taught. So consequently, the ordained monks lived a life of strict discipline. They all try to observe the discipline that they have heard through the Upali, who is more senior upholder of Vinaya. They exerted all the effort to observe the rules strictly by the book, so to speak. And the king and all the faithful devotees also were unhesitatingly offering all the worldly needs, the food and clothes and so on, so that all the people like Ananda, people like Mahakashyapa were treated like the Buddha was treated, because they could see their enlightened features. So they all realized the preciousness of Buddha after the Buddha passed away even more. They all realized the preciousness of Dharma. Now they realize Dharma still is there, even the Buddha passed away. And then they realized, Sangha is more important, because if people like Arhat, those who have attained stream entry and Arhathood, are actually holding the very teachings. And so the great reverence was given towards the Arhats, as they were given to the Buddha themselves. Because previously they were monastics, but they were all offering the devotion, adoration to the Buddha. But now the Buddha wasn't there. The whole focus came to the Dharma, and whole Dharma is upheld by the Arhats. The Arhats had in their memory and meditation all the Dharma. Therefore, it was destined that Dharma will continue through the existence of the strong Sangha. So for 40 years, because duration of the reign of Mahakashyapa is not specified, but I don't think he stayed very long after Buddha passed away. So after 40 years of Buddha passing away, Ananda, who is the second successor, who have already attained arhathood, under Ananda's guidance, many young practitioners all attained arhathood, including Suvarna Varna, because the attainment of arhathood by Suvarna Varna is very clearly detailed in a particular text called Suvarna Varna Avadana. So this is a legend text. And so at that time, King Ajatashatru thought, King Ajatashatru has seen the Buddha pass away. He thought, if even a person like Suvarna Varna could smoothly and without difficulty be led to arhathood by Ananda, he must be a Shravakas. Because then he thought, Ananda must be a Shravaka. Because otherwise they thought Ananda was just an attendant, remember? Ananda was an attendant. So they were sort of thinking that he was just another arhat, another monk, trying to do something, because under guidance of Ananda, when he saw someone fairly ordinary, Suvarna want to get arhathood, then King Ajatasattu thought, oh, Ananda himself must be Shravakas, like the Buddha himself, because those days Buddha was a synonym, but Shravaka was the name also as treated like a Buddha. Thus thinking, he then went to Ananda, not treating him as an excess sort of attendant of the Buddha. Sometimes people think the person is always remain as an attendant, never see them as a teacher of his own right and realize Arhat as his own right. And then King Ajatasattu completely changed his mind. He worshipped for amazing number of years with all sorts of gifts. He offered for 5,000 arhats, including Arya Ananda. So King Ajatasattu became the very great benefactor, Dhanapati of the Dharma, by seeing how even ordinary people like Suvarna get an arhathood under the guidance of Buddha's former attendant. So therefore, he didn't treat them as he himself is no longer now Dharma king. Remember, previously he committed matricide. So he should remember who he was. Anyway, so then came from Magadha, from the city of the south, a Brahmin, because most of them Brahmin anyway, belonging to the Bharadwaja family. He was a great expert in magic, and he entered into a competition of magic power with some of the arhats, because all the arhats could show magic no problem. And whereas the Brahmin could also show some magics, not through his practice, but through some tricks, I suppose. So in the presence of the king Ajatasattu and other people, this Brahmin conjured up 4 big mountains made out of gold, silver, crystal, and lapis lazuli. These 4. Each of these 4 mountains had pleasure gardens full of jewels. Each of the garden had 4 lotus ponds full of all kinds of birds chirping, and it's like a magnificent kind of a realm. And then now he came to compete with Buddha's disciples, and then Ananda, Ananda is a arhat. He can do anything, Ananda also conjured up hordes of wild elephants. Wild elephants. These are wild elephants that could not be destroyed. So those are wild animals. Nobody can harm anything because they're so strong. They devoured all the lotus and devastated the ponds and parks and everything that the Brahmin has conjured up, and the trees fell down by a strong blast of their kind of breath or wind, and nothing remained of those 4 mountains and of the boundaries because of the terrible thunder shower and destruction caused by the wild animals, wild elephants. Then Ananda himself transformed his body into 100 bodies, 500 bodies, by the way, 500 bodies. So you can see, Ananda would have attained at least 5th Bhumi by then, because or more, He multiplied his body into 500 bodies, and from some of them he emitted light. Some others started shower of rain. Some others showered 4-fold performance activities, doing, walking, sitting, lying down in the sky. All of the Ananda everywhere. Ananda everywhere. From the upper parts of certain other bodies came out fire, and their lower parts came out streams of water, So Ananda just showed this. And And thus Ananda showed so many assortment of magical feats like this, to the complete amazement of the Brahmin and King Ajatasattu. King Ajatasattu only recently thought that he's not an ordinary attendant. He must be an Ara type of thing. But until now, Ananda hasn't showed any such spectacle. The Brahmin, who had a very kind of ill intent of showing those, conjure those magical, and then they completely become converted, and he just therefore paid full reverence to Ananda. As a result of the elaborate exposition of teachings, this is the giving of the teachings by Ananda. 80,000 people, including 500 those Brahmins, all attained Arhathood within 7 days. So those days, they don't talk about middle way philosophy. They don't talk about books. They just gave teachings, and those teachings were almost like as fresh as what they heard from the words of the mouth of the Buddha. And on another occasion, when Ananda was residing at the Jetavana, now this is in Shravasti, then there came a very wealthy landlord called Shanavasika. Shanavasika is going to be his future disciple and successor. And he lavishly entertained the Sangha, and he became the benefactor for 5 years. And so, because Ananda went to Jetavana, after this he himself received ordination. He became so inspired, and like our Buddha's benefactor Anathapindika, first became a lay devotee sponsor, and later on became monk and attained Arhathood. So here also Shanavasika also did the same. 5 years he became lay devotee and sponsor, and then later on he himself took on robes. There are a lot of stories like that. I know quite a few even Western people who were quite wealthy and became very great devotee of some teachers, and then later on they became also monastics. One Indian guy called Kabiri Saxena in Lama Zopa's organized. He was many years in Delhi. I don't know what his actual profession was, but many years helping the center, and then later on he became monk. Of course, now he's a very important monastic in the community. So the tradition is really like this. So anyway, so Shanavasika now became ordained. He became very learned in the Tripitakas, and he eventually attained Arhathood, free from the twofold obscurations. So who would gain free from fold obscuration, attain Arhathood, unless they realize the right view? The right view, they argue so much, debate so much in the Nalanda scholars, all came from the teachings of the Buddha. So they don't specify philosophically. Mahayana texts always talk about they defeated other people in debate, and they only talk about that. But in this kind of early history, they talk about gave the teachings, made them to meditate, made them to attain Arhathood. So it's a very different kind of outcome. So Mahayana is like a triumphant debaters, But I think that those early disciples were just triumphant teachers who taught the Dharma, taught meditation, and make people to realize Arhathood. So this looks very impressive to me, very inspiring. I'm not so keen to hear who got victorious, who got defeated, and it's just like an Olympic or something, Those winners are grinners and the rest are crying. It's ridiculous. That's not a Buddhism, really. So anyway, in this way, on various occasions, Ananda led Arhathood about tens of thousands of people and monks, and and he himself resided in the middle of Ganges, where it flowed between two lands, So there was like a little island between the two tributaries of Ganges, Vaishali and Magadha, and so that the people of Litsavi, that's Vaishali, and people of Magadha, King Ajatas, could be equally favored with his relics, because he knew that his followers were King Ajatasattu as well as in Vaishali, because remember, Ananda became very important later on to ordain, not later, before Buddha passed away. He was very instrumental to ordain women in Vaishali, So Vaishali. So he didn't want to pass away in either of the two cities, but wanted to pass away in the middle of the Ganges, anyway, so he deliberately spent spending time on a small island in the middle of Ganges. So, being prayed for ordination by 500 sages, he miraculously created an island in the middle of river. So he created an island in the middle of the Ganges, and then he ordained 500 monks. With his miraculous power, he got the bhikshus to congregate there, and within an hour led 500 sages from the stage of Utpasambhada to Arathut. He ordained them, and they all attained Arathut. That is why these 500 were famed as 500 Madhyantikas. Madhyantika meaning because they all got enlightened, attained Arathut in the midday. Madhyantika meaning in the midday enlightenment. So enlightenment is possible in the midday, not just early in the dusk or dawn. So all the followers of Ananda received the name Madhyantikas. We Tibetan call Nyima Kungpa, the Arathut. And they are known as Maha Madhyantikas, followers of them. After this, Ananda himself attained Nirvana. He passed away, and his relics of Ananda were could not catch fire by human beings try to set alight. It just burned by itself. It's self-kindled fire. The ashes of his bones assumed the form of two balls of gems and became relics. And were carried by the waves of the two shores of the river, and the northern one was taken by people from Vrijis, southern one was taken by King Ajatasattu. And they both sides built stupas in their respective countries. So what is the respective countries? That's in Vaishali. These days, when you go to Vaishali, the biggest stupa remain there is, they say, Ananda stupa. So I believe Ananda, one of the main stupa in memory of Ananda was built in Vaishali. It's a very big mound there. They usually say it's Ananda stupa next to the Ashoka pillar. And then, of course, the other part was taken by King Ajatasattu to Magadha, somewhere in Rajgriha. In this way, Ananda, after Buddha passed away, after Mahakashyapa, served the doctrine as the head of the Buddha Dharma for 40 years. Now, number of people who attend Arathut under his guidance is thousands and thousands. So what doing did they attend Arathut? If they didn't have the right view taught by the Buddha, if they don't have the prajna, if they don't have the samadhi, if they don't have the shila, how would they attend Arathut? So we need to really think that the so-called Madhyamika doctrine written by Nalanda Pandita is just one way to edify the authors, but they must have learned the very words the Buddha taught, that Ananda taught, and then so on. So anyway, next year after Ananda passed away, the King Ajatasattu also passed away. King Ajatasattu is of course having committed patricide. He straight away was reborn in hell. So that's Buddhism. History of Buddhism also tell about hell history, hell history, history of those who went to hell. And anyway, it is said that, but he didn't live very long as a hell being life. He died and then reborn in the heavens, and but he was born in the heaven where he could hear Dharma, and then he was reborn again back on the earth, and he became disciple. King Ajatasattu became disciple of Shanavasin. Now the Shanavasika is the layman who became monastic and now become Ananda's successor. So, and it said that as a disciple of Shanavasika, the reincarnation of Ajatasattu also attained arhathood. So these are the stories of encouragement that even one life you become a notorious king, you go to hell briefly, and then come out to after you have done your time, so to speak, in the hell. And then, due to the merit that he committed, he was able to attain arhathood. So that's the chapter 1, because it's very important to know that here Taranatha gives a fairly detailed account of the work of Ananda. So Ananda is no longer seen or portrayed as attendant, but himself as as independently realized arhat, whose guidance had not only brought thousands into Dharma, but all of them attained arhathood. So much so that even former people who have formerly done many very heavy misdeeds, like heinous karma, like King Ajatasattu, was also later on liberated by his own disciple Shanavasika. But we do not see much of writings to mention about Upali. The Upali is the compiler of the Vinaya, and all the monks were very keen to follow the Vinaya to the very spirit of the words of the Buddha. And this is largely to be given credit to Upali. So there is a school of thought among modern Buddhologists. There's a why that this history do not mention much about role of Upali. Because Mahakashapa obviously is the first patriarch. Second is obviously Ananda. Then why is Venerable Upali not mentioned? Indeed, why? They definitely seem to have two school of thought. One who biased the Vinaya, and one who were more leaning onto Sutra. So some are Sutra-centric, some are Vinaya-centric. I think the Vinaya-centric caused some division because everybody disagreed later on. Everybody disagreed about how strict they should observe Vinaya. So it broke into as many as 18. That's probably one of the reasons why this Taranatha's history say very little about the role of Upali, except he compiled the Vinaya. So that's interesting. Another thing is now King Ajatasattu, who passed away and born in hell and so on, his son is called Subahu. He ascended to throne, and because his father died a year after Ananda passed away, and he also worshipped the Buddha and the law of the Buddha for 17 years. So he became a very good son. He carried the legacy of propagating the Dharma, because he at that time the reigning highest master is Venerable Arya Shanavasika, and but he did not live very long. But one of the disciples named Madhyantika, because this is one of the name that came from the middle of the island. middle of Ireland. And he went to reside in Varanasi and expounded the Dharma there. And he taught the doctrine to laymen, Brahmins, and alike, not necessarily emphasizing people needing to become monastic, but taught to everyone. So anyway, that at that time he became very annoyed. The local people of the Brahmins in Varanasi became very annoyed by all these Buddhist monks everywhere, and begging in the streets. And look, the whole street become overtaken by begging monks every morning, and they felt overwhelmed, And they said to them, "Is there no other place to get alms from? Has Varanasi alone has the surplus to offer you guys? And if we feed you, are you not obliged to give us something in return?" So the local people were saying, "Why don't you go somewhere else? Why you're coming here? We're giving you food, but why you are not giving anything to us?" So on hearing all this, the Venerable Arya Madhyantika, along with his 10,000 followers, flew through the sky. He says, "If you don't want us, we'll go." Flew through the sky and went to the north. And so they left. They left the place. So let's get out of here type of thing, Of course, Ara don't say let's get out of here. They say let's fly out of here. They flew out of there, and there, when they reached in the north near a mountain called Ushira, there they met a householder who was happy to arrange the food and all to the congregation of Sangha, and he entertained them for whole 1 year. 4,000 arhats assembled there. So wherever the great teachers followed, and all the followers went there. So there were 40,000 people there. And then the teaching started to spread north. So north we are talking about now, heading towards Punjab and Kashmir, that region. In this way, Venerable Madhyantika preached the doctrine for 3 years in Usira. So at that time, of course, like most of their predecessors, Venerable Arya Shanavasika resided in Shravasti, because Shravasti is where Buddha spent 25 years. That's where also Ananda went, and so. As a result of preaching there, many people have reached Arhathood. Nearly 1,000 people reach Arhathood. So all these people attending Arhathood, thousands of them, they must be all hearing the right view. They must be hearing all the middle way teachings. So what is the middle way that the Nalanda Panditas had to debate so much until they have defeated all their opponents? I can't get it, There was already pure teachings circulating, and whoever hears it, they all attain Arhathood. Maybe there are occasionally opponents from other religious traditions offering challenge, but there were only thousands and thousands of people attaining Arhathood by merely listening to the teachings. Anyway, earlier during the time of the King Ashoka, there lived 2 persons who, through Brahmin by birth, were extremely tough, wicked, and sinful, were indifferent to purity and impurity of food. They used to kill all sorts of animals. They were called Panna and Nava. And they committed theft in some houses and were therefore punished by the king. This made them very angry, so they offered midday meals to many arhats and prayed, "By virtue of this act, may we be reborn as yakshas and plunder the king and people of Magadha." So that's the kind of ill intention. After some time, these 2 persons died in an epidemic and were reborn as yakshas. Yakshas are very terrorists, those who create terror. On the 7th and 8th year of the reign of King Subahu, they became very powerful yakshas of Magadha and caused terrible epidemic to spread in the country. A large number of persons and cattle perished but the epidemic did not subside. When the astrologers came to know the causes of the epidemic was because of those yakshas who were reborn with ill will, the citizens of Magadha succeeded in inviting Shanavasika from Shravasti. He's the head of the Dharma. They invited him and entreated him to overpower the two yakshas. Those days, Buddhist arhats were so. When they're invited, they ask, they do everything, and then usually all the problems get solved. Anyway, so Venerable Shanavasika came to Gurva Hill and took shelter in the cave in which the two yakshas were residing. At that time, these yakshas had gone to other places, were then called back by a friend of theirs who was also a yaksha. On returning, they smash in a terrible fury the stones that form the cave, but there emerged another cave, and the Venerable Arya Shanavasika was sitting there doing meditation. This happened three times. Then these two yakshas set fire to the cave, but the Arhat covered all the 10 directions with great flames. The two yakshas got scared and tried to escape, but they could find no way out because of the flames all around. When they surrendered to Shanavasika, the flames got extinguished. After this, the Shanavasika preached the doctrine to them, and they became full of great devotion and led them to take refuge and adopt the trainings of the Dharma. Immediately after this, the epidemic was brought to end. So thousands of Brahmins and householders thus witnessed the miraculous power of attaining, witnessed the miraculous power of Venerable Shanavasika. Shanavasika is the disciple Ananda. Yeah, so this is the third parter. So you can see this little story that Taranatha tells about the Ananda and the Shanavasika, and of course Mahakashyapa. They all attend Arhathood. They taught teachings, they taught meditations. Everybody was attaining Arhathood. So this is this not interesting? Maybe this is not philosophically that interesting. They don't talk about really doing intellectual debate with the opponents. They were all showing miracles. Maybe this is the difference in the emphasis of the Nalanda Panditas story. Instead of engaging in miraculous power or showing them off, they rather engage in scholastic works and then defeating their opponent through their writings. Because that's all they seem to tell about. They say, that school said this, they are wrong, and this is incorrect, this is our view, this is the right view. And this is the actual approach of the Nalanda Pandita's writing. So what we are saying is Buddhism before Nalanda Pandita was all about miracles, attaining Arhathood, hearing just the teachings, and simply taking refuge and practicing the right meditation, right discipline, and right view, of course. But the right view is the middle way. What did the Arhats teach right view beside the right view? Where does the middle way originate? The middle way originated from the Buddha's meditation and teachings, not from Nalanda Panditas. This is very important, because we get the impression these days as if Nalanda Pandita, they say even Nagarjuna is the founding father of the middle way school, which is not correct. It is the Buddha's original sermon of the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, that was a central doctrine of the middle way, was taught in there. So therefore, it's very important to, what I'm trying to do is, so that we do not think that the Buddhism that is taught by Nalanda Panditas are not something contrary to the teachings taught by these arhats. But there is that kind of interpretation as if even Theravadins also think, oh, Mayanist people and the authors of Mayan texts, they don't even know them. They don't even give credit to them. Why? Because they seem to have a completely different approach, scholastic, dialectical approach. Dialectical nature of the texts written by Nagarjuna and so on, maybe has this over-intellectual flavor of the Nalanda scholars' approach, textual scholars' approach, become very less contemplative, maybe. Because in the early days of the Arhathood, a story of Ananda and Venerable Shanavasin that we are talking about, they're all about, through meditation, pure discipline, the Shila of a monastic, mostly monastic. Of course, even the devoted lay people become monastic, and they all attain Arhathood. So that's the story. We got to know that the Buddhism before Nalanda was all about observing the strict discipline, meditation, and attain Arhathood. That's the story. And being sponsored by of course, the kings and the benefactors. So that's about Shanavasin. Now the second is the account of the King Sudanu. Sudanu is the grandson of Ajatasattu. After the death of King Subahu, his son Sudanu succeeded him. At that time, there took a place conversion of Kashmir. Kashmir has now already become Buddhist by the teacher Madantika. Madantika is a disciple of Ananda. Remember Ananda? Those 5,000 who attend Arhathood in midday. So the one leader of that is Madantika. He went to Kashmir, which is this is prior to Kashmir becoming Muslim. When we are talking about this, we are talking about 200 BC. 200 BC, Buddhism already has spread to Kashmir. By his miraculous power, Madantika went to Kashmir and settled on the shore of the lake. This must be lake called Dal in Srinagar. Well, inside the lake there lived a very famous Naga. The furious Naga king Udushta and his attendant caused a terrible storm, rain, but could not shake even a corner of Madantika's robe. The venerable Madantika came to near the lake. The Naga could cause so much havoc, but they couldn't even move even small corner of the robe of venerable Madantika. The rain of weapons let loose by them changed into flowers, showers of flowers. So the Naga's king appeared in person and asked, "Oh Arya, what exactly do you want?" He replied, "Give me a plot of land." So asked me, give a land. How much land? Is just enough for a seat with cross-legged. So he asked, just somewhere I can sit. So let it be yours. With his miraculous power, he covered 9 valleys of Kashmir. He just spread his long legs, like the basketball players maybe, long legs, and by his single sitting posture, he covered 9 valleys of Kashmir. And Naga asked, "How many attendants are there with your holiness?" He says, 500. 500. If it is less even by one, I should take back the land. The teacher Buddha had predicted that this place was going to be fit for vipassana meditation. Buddha had already predicted that in the future of 200 years after my passing, there will be a teacher called Madantika and who will promote meditation. So Madantika thought Brahmins and householders should also be made to settle here, and because the donors should exist together. And thus thinking, he brought Kashmir 500 Madhyantika followers from Ushira, and many 100,000 Brahmins, householders, highly devoted to Dharma from Varanasi also relocated in Kashmir. Because of its weather, many just discovered this heavenly realm called Kashmir. These days it's like that in this during monsoon season. All the southern Indians go to Kashmir. It's so cool and nice. After this, they gradually assemble a large number of persons from various directions, and Kashmir become a great Buddhist learning center. Even during the lifetime of Madhyantika himself, the Kashmir became ornamented with a large number of sanghas living in 9 big towns, many hill villages and palaces, and 12 monasteries. From there he went to Gandharamadana mountain, and with his miraculous power, he, accompanied by the people of Kashmir, subdued the Nagas there with charmed fire. Nagas promised to give him the quantity of saffron field which could be covered by a shadow of a stretched robe. Then the Arhat enlarged his robe with miraculous power, and all the people, his followers, collected saffron saplings. In the moment they returned to Kashmir, the Kashmir was blessed as a place where they grow saffron. Even these days, Tibetans call it Kashmiri saffron. Do you have Kashmiri saffron? They think the saffron, best place that saffron comes from Kashmir. Oh, well, Spain has produced quite a good too, but in Indian subcontinent, Kashmir is considered to be a place where they grow saffron. Why? Because all these people wanted to dye the robe color maroon, and came from the miraculous produced saffron. They don't have to buy any deluxe or the modern kind of thing. By converting Kashmir into saffron producing land, he told them this is going to be the main source for increasing your wealth, material wealth as well as spiritual wealth. Thus saying, he converted all the inhabitants of Kashmir into the followers of the law and attained Arhat. So this shows Buddhism spread to Kashmir 200 BC. Whole Kashmir. There was no Muslim, those days no Muslim. Muslim didn't come. Muslim and Christianity were developed around the same time. So it is said that he preached the doctrine in Kashmir for 20 years. At that time, Madhyantika's departure from Kashmir, Arya Shanavasika preached the doctrine on the 4 classes of followers in the 6 cities. Those days, they don't call India. They call the 6 cities. Because India is altogether is comprised with the 6 cities. The 6 cities are Shravasti, Saketa, Champaka, Varanasi, Rajgir, and then Vaishali. Vaishali. After reigning for 23 years, King Sudanu passed away. This is the grandson of Ajatasattu. Then his officers and attendants, numbering 2,000 on all, received ordination. Their king died, everybody took ordination under Venerable Shanavasika, along with the numerous people, including he spent rainy season retreat in the crematorium of Shetavana. That's in both near Rajgir. During the rainy season retreat, he took them to show the crematorium itself. This led them to attend great deep meditation, purifying their mind of all desire. It instantly led them to Arhathood. After this, Upagupta is the 4th patriarch. The son of a Gupta, the incense seller, had the realization of the truth immediately after being ordained as a monk. Within 7 days, he attained the Arhathood. This is Upagupta. Then the Venerable Shanavasin entrusted the doctrine to Upagupta, and himself, Shanavasika himself, then attained Nirvana, means pass away in Champa. Champa is the one of the 6 cities. The number of those who realized the truth as a result of Shanavasika's preaching amounted to about 1 lakh, and the number of Arhat also reached about 10,000. So this is what we are talking about. The whole history before Nalanda of Buddhism is all about the Arhat giving teachings, making ordinations, and attaining Arhathood. According to the tradition of Kashmir, Madhyantika also must be counted as one of the succession of teachers who were entrusted the law. Because while living in the Madhya Desham in central India, he looked after the law for 15 years. So he also because those days maybe what you looked after probably is only the range wherever you travel, So they seem to be focused largely on the northern belt of India. Because Theravada talks about all the story in the south. So even though this is a Theravada, but these are the early Theravadins who actually propagated the teaching in Kashmir. Only after Madhyantaka departed from Kashmir, the Shanavasaka looked after the law. Therefore, it is said that the successor of those interested with law should be counted as 8, not 7. Because some people don't count the Madhyantika as one of them, because Madhyantika is contemporary of Shanavasika. But the Madhyantika did just as much of guarding the teachings and admitting many people to attain Arhathood. According to others, a teacher had himself predicted that Madhyantika was to convert Kashmir, because he said the Buddha himself has predicted that the monk by the name of Madhyantika will convert Kashmir into Buddhism. So that's why Ananda directly instructed Madhyantika to go to Kashmir in order to fulfill the prophecy the Buddha has given. But however, they said the actual main role of the guarding the doctrine, Ananda entrusted to Shanavasika. But there are some people who think the Shanavasika and Madhyantika are the same person. So whether you count them as two individuals or contemporaries, probably the two contemporary is the story. Because people are often, they couldn't fit more than one person, They say, he's his successor, that's it, type of thing. They don't realize that one teacher could have quite a number of good disciples who all three of them can do the same thing. So I'm of the opinion that Madhyantika was not only contemporary of Shanavasika, but also may have been entrusted by Ananda to go and preach the doctrine in Kashmir, because it has already been predicted by the Buddha that will happen. So this is the story of up to the teacher Upagupta. So now we are coming towards the starting before the King Ashoka's period. So we will stop there today. So what I'm really saying is those first three teachers' reign after Buddha passed away was all about attaining Arhathood, and into thousands, thousands. And they don't indulge into the stories of debating with the heretics or defeating them in dialectical debates, telling them what kind of awful philosophical view they held. They don't say any of that. I don't know whether there are many texts that I haven't read says them, but only small amount of Tibetan text goes to talk about pre-Nalanda Pandita Buddhist history. When they do, they talk all about this. So this is very important to know that what inspired people during those days is the miraculous power of the disciples, not only being able to change their mind, but also attain great realization and perform many, many miracles. And then they were able to convert people in thousands, and they also meditate, and they're also able to attain Arhathood. maybe that was the most fortunate eon during that, because even the so-called the former attendant of the Buddha can also make other people attain Arhathood, which was the king Ajatashatru thought that was not possible, but when he saw it, he couldn't believe his eyes. So that is probably the amazing dint of those arhats was they all knew the teachings by heart, and they were teaching, they were practicing, they were living like a pure monastic by just the one piece of rope and just alms bowl. They did not engage in acquisition of wealth, land, property, and anything like that. So you can see the renunciation of possessions, worldly activities, probably not only was the key to attain good meditation and discipline and realization. These days, however, expert people are philosophical on Buddhist teachings. They might write theses, they may destroy the others' so-called wrong views, but their legs are completely stuck in the mud pool of samsara's ownership of possessions and wealth and estates, and maybe that's the reason why those who attain Arhathood are very, very fewer and fewer. But in those early days, we must not forget these great arhats. And during this time, there was no writings. They didn't even write the Buddha's word, let alone their own so-called commentary. They didn't indulge into writing text. The arhats were tellers. Shravakas meaning hearers and tellers. They tell what they heard from the Buddha, word for word, adding a little prologue at the beginning and little epilogue at the end. Who was there, what caused the teaching, how it affected everybody, adding that, but otherwise they're always retelling the various teachings. So that's called Shravakas. Shra means hearers, Vak means speakers, tellers. So hearers and tellers. So that's what the Theravadins are. Right? The Theravadins are largely Shravakans. And if you go to these days to the Theravadin group, they always talk about particular sutras and Vinaya. They don't talk about some writings by late in the hundreds or late in the first millennium or second millennium. They don't talk about if they quote some luminaries who were commentators, they may, but they mainly always talk about the sutras, the Vinaya, all of that. So that's why the sutra-centric Buddhists are literalists and usually Theravadins. Theravadins only accept the words of the Buddha and maybe a handful of commentators that they think are authentic, but they are therefore their number of body text is very small. That body of the Buddhist canon is much smaller than the so-called Mahayana and Vajrayana. Mahayana and Vajrayana got lots of commentary literature. There is no doubt that these are authentic writings of those scholars, but it's really important that the Theravadins being more literalist and scripturalist, they are actually like the Old Testament. They want the old book. They want to keep the old book. They don't want to go into new book and so on. So that's why they always talk about sutras and the Vinayas, a quote from this sutra and that sutra. And Buddhism after Nalanda Panditas always talk about the who said what. They don't talk about which text of the Buddha said what. They may occasionally quote a sutra here and there, but mostly they quote Shantideva, Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti. That's enough type of thing. But the Theravadin says they don't even know who those damn people are. So that's the big division between Theravada and Mahayana comes because of the not filling the gap before the Nalanda Panditas and time after the Buddha. So we have to really know that they were all practitioners of the Tripitakas. And the Tripitakas are the root. Kangyur, Tibetan called Kangyur. Kangyur is all the Tripitakas. Tengyur is all the commentaries, writing by Nagarjuna and Chantakirti and Shantideva, and they're all there. But not in Kangyur, not a single word. So Theravadins don't accept the Nalanda Panditas' writings, but all the teachings of the Buddha. And that's part of the reason much of the textual scholar has taken up to diversify Buddhism into many, many branches, schools. And even within Theravada, there are some branches, but at least there's not a lot of division to that extent. So it's very important that the Mahayanists should remember that all of their so-called Shastras, commentary literature, were written on the basis of all the words and texts that was retold by Shravakas, by likes of Ananda to Shanavasin to Madhentika to Upagupta, and so on. Okay, we'll conclude here. Thank you very much, everybody. Has been generation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Rinpoche.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Phil. Hi.